with your host, comedian and military veteran, Bernard the Laugh Therapist Hines, where we discuss P.T.S.D, processing traumatic situations differently, and give you tools to help you overcome the stigma of seeking help. If you're ready to be inspired, then welcome to the Stigma-Free Zone. Here's your host, the Laugh Therapist himself, Bernard Hines.
What up, everybody? What up? What up? It's your boy, Bernard Hines, a.k.a. the Laugh Therapist. And listen, welcome to the P.T.S.D. Processing Traumatic Situations Differently podcast. Here, we try to inform, enlighten, and become advocates for one another as we learn more productive ways to process our trauma. Always remember, as a therapist, I am not licensed, I'm just medicated. Welcome to the Stigma-Free Zone. What up, everybody? Thank y'all for tuning in today, wherever you're listening to, in the day, in the night, in the morning. Thank y'all for tuning in to this podcast. Listen, y'all, we have been having some great feedback, and we have an awesome guest on today. Y'all, I have Stephen W. Banks. He had wrote a book, Healing the Father Wounds. He is uniquely skilled, inspiring, encouraging, releasing others into their destiny. Right now, he's an author of 4 books, but the one we're going to be talking about is Healing the Father Wound. Right now, welcome to the stage, Apostle Stephen W. Banks, but we're going to know him today as Stephen W. Banks. How you doing, sir?
Hey, doing well. Thank you for that awesome introduction. Excited to be with you.
Yes, sir. Thank you for being here. I got to let folks know this book has been very, very powerful. It has been mind-blowing because being a person, as I was told when I was doing this, Bernard, you know you have father wounds. This is not about you. They said, let the man get the message out. Let the expert get the message out. So, but how you doing today, sir?
Hey, I'm doing great. Just got back in late last night, and I've been looking forward to this opportunity to share with you and your audience. And I just want you to know, first of all, how proud I am to see what God's doing with you.
Thank you, sir.
With this podcast and your comedy and your heart. You've been phenomenal from day one. My first time meeting you, and to see what God's doing in your life now, I'm elated to see where you are in your journey.
Thank you, sir. And a lot of people always ask me, where did I get my comedy? Where did I start comedy? I started comedy in your ministry. I don't know if you know that.
Wow.
That's the first time I hit the stage.
Wow.
Yes,
so you started comedy in my ministry, I guess, after listening to some of my sermons.
No, it won't. I'm gonna give people a little synopsis because they need to know this. I retired and left Oklahoma.
Right.
And we came, and when I left, someone told me, they said, they got me in the corner. They said, hey, when you get to Virginia, you need to start doing comedy. Because I was always being funny around the church and stuff like that.
Right.
Came to your ministry. This was in January. In February, y'all was having a Valentine's Day celebration for couples. And you said, we are not going to hire a comedian from outside. We're going to find one inside. And I looked up and I said, God, you are funny.
Wow.
That's the first. I did the audition that they had. I was the only one that showed up. The only one that showed up. And that's how I got started doing my comedy. So I want to thank you for hearing from God and say, we ain't hiring nobody. We're going to find somebody inside. And that's how I got started. That is it.
Wow, I'm excited to hear that. I remember several years ago, Tudor Bismarck prophesied into my life, and he said, you're raising oaks.
Wow.
And when I look at different individuals that's been a part of my ministry down through the years, and they're in different sectors, I celebrate them wherever they are, and whatever the call and the journey that's on, and to see what God's doing with you. Man, I'm just elated, and thank you so much for just encouraging me with that testimony. I had no idea. So
yes, sir. Yes,
awesome.
sir.
Awesome.
And as we're talking about wounds and stuff, you know, people have a lot of church hurt.
Yes.
So I was living in Chesapeake, working at Fort Eustis. Your ministry was right behind Fort Eustis. So I'm driving back and forth, and gas was $4 a gallon.
Wow.
And I came to you, I said, sir, I think I'm gonna have to find me a ministry in Chesapeake where it's closer to my home. And only thing you asked me, where you going?
Right.
And I said, is Bishop Kim? It was Pastor. I said, Pastor Kim Brown. He said, you got my blessing.
Yes,
you know
sir.
what I'm saying? You was like, I wanted to make sure you was going to a Bible teaching church.
Right.
Yeah.
I love it. What's amazing about Bishop Kim Brown, him and I, we were classmates in seminary.
Correct.
And so he's been a major supporter, as well as me supporting his ministry. I knew you would be in good hands.
Yes, sir.
So it's just awesome to see what's taking place in your life and his life and in the whole ministry, because it's really about the kingdom. It's not building our name and our little clique.
Yes.
Nobody got time for that.
Yes, that was a release right there, because people's, oh, you leaving, where so I want to thank you for that. But we're gonna jump into this book. First of all, what made you write this book?
What made me write it? Bernard, I had no idea, and I had never even heard the term father wound in my entire life. I was in a conference in Arkansas, and just speaking to the host pastor, in the midst of the conversation, he dropped the word father wound, and it's like an explosion that went off in my heart.
Wow.
Where I knew for the first time that this was what I was dealing with in my life. And at that time, I was in my mid-40s. But I never had any idea. And I came back to Virginia. I started seeking the heart of the Lord and studying. I recognized what I've been dealing with in my life was the father wound. And then just sharing my story and not having my father in my life growing up during those formative years, it affected everything.
Okay.
It affected everything. And so my father and I, we reconnected when I was 16. He's been in my life ever since, and that's been almost 44 or 45 years. And my father and I, we have a great relationship now. But during that time, not having my father, it produced a wound. And the more I researched on it, the more I recognized that this is a traumatic pain.
Yes, it is.
That we experience when we don't feel the love and the affirmation of fathers in our lives.
Wow. And I know people said don't make it about me, but I got to talk about what we're going through, because I'm in the process right now. I never met my father a day in my life.
Okay.
So I'm in the process now of Ancestry.com trying to find the other side of the family. So this right here is awesome. So
wow.
What is a father wound?
Well, man, you got my heart skipping a beat, even as you're pursuing locating your father, because I believe the assignment that the Lord's given me out of Malachi is the spirit of Elijah, turning the hearts of the fathers to the children, the hearts of the children to their fathers. And sometimes the separation is such a vast separation. Fathers may not want to have anything to do with the children. Children may not want to have, for whatever reason, they may not know who their father is, or the father may not even know he has children, or different things. But one thing I want to encourage you, as well as others, that this is really a work of the Spirit.
Yes.
That because we all need to have our identity, and we get our identity from our fathers. When we look at the word of the Lord, even Jesus, when he was baptized, heaven opened up, and we hear the Father said, "This is my beloved Son, in whom I'm well pleased." Mm-hmm. That's affirmation. That's identity. But when we don't have fathers speaking in our life, man, we're craving for identity. And that's why, as young boys, we want to be a part of the football team. We want to be a part of the gang. We want to be a part of whatever, because we're looking for a place of belonging that only the Father can speak placement and value and identity in the lives of sons and daughters. And I never had that growing up in my life. And that's what I describe as the father wound. Is the lack of affirmation.
Okay.
Where our fathers are affirming with words, with action, with deeds into our soul to let us know how special and how unique we are. And if we don't have that, man, I feel the Holy Ghost.
I'm telling you, you don't know. Who this is going to be powerful. This
Yeah.
is going to be powerful because I had a young man who was on the podcast a couple of weeks ago, Mr. Jerry Creekmore. He said, we have experienced PTSD and trauma from not having our father, but what have we put on our kids?
Yeah.
And that hit me like a brick.
Yes.
Because even though I didn't have the father for the father wound, what wounds did I put on my kids?
Yeah. 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 And with it, Bernard, it's generational. And when we look at, even when we look historically, and let me say this about the father wound, and even writing the book, it's not just for Christians, it's not just for men, it's not just for African American. Wherever I go to Connecticut with a predominantly white viewership. Man, they tap into it because all of us have a father. Now, whether or not we have had a healthy relationship with our father, that's a different question. But
Correct.
what I'm grateful for with you, the sooner we can address this, the sooner we can become healthier in our journey, and we can break the generational cycle that's passed on, generational trauma passed on to our sons and daughters.
Correct.
And I think that's one of the ways I define healing is a breakage of the trauma, and it creates new patterns and new mindsets and new beliefs. So we're not operating out of brokenness,
Correct.
but we understand what we've gone through, and we're doing the work of healing. And even as we do the work of healing, we're not putting those pain in the weight. We're not passing that on to our sons and daughters.
Wow. Listen, y'all, we're talking to Apostle Stephen W. Banks, y'all. We going to have some good stuff right here. This right here is powerful and is much needed. I want to ask you, what does a father wound look like?
It depends on. The father wound is as individualized as the person who receives it.
Okay.
For example, if we look at, let's say, the prodigal son, it's very easy for us to identify the younger brother wilding out because of wounds or conditions with the father. Give me what belongs. I'm going to do my thing. And so you have people who display outwardly, and they just wild out. For example, I doing some of my presentation, I show a video of Dennis Rodman, and we look at Dennis Rodman. He, we know, in the NBA and Hall of Fame, and at his Hall of Fame speech, he's crying and talking about the greatest day of his life. He's talking about not having his father in his life, and he talked about his father had, if I'm not mistaken, 20 or so kids.
Wow.
But never had a relationship with him. And he refers to Phil Jackson and the other coaches as father figure. And so we see the Dennis Rodman type wilding out.
Okay.
But Bernard, I would even submit to you that the elder brother in the house is dealing with a father wound as well.
Okay.
Because now he may be politically polished and has his degree from Norfolk State and Virginia Union, and let me throw in Virginia Tech. And so let me throw in the Hokie.
Yes,
So it may be politically polished and refined, but the father wound is not something that can be displayed. It's a condition of the heart.
Okay.
And so when we see the jealousy, when we see all of that, there's some things inwardly. And so you can't you're not necessarily can describe everybody having the same traits or the same act.
Got
and it varies on the individual in the personality.
Got it. That's why people say we all grew up in the same household, but we all had a different childhood.
Yeah.
I've heard that several times. We all grew up in the same house. You said it was bad. I ain't think it was that bad.
Yeah. Because how your perception is your reality.
Correct.
And when we look at these relationships, we're trying to deal with it the best we know how. But when we look at father wound, and one of the things, like you shared your story, not knowing your father, that there's a whole chapter that I deal with, like anonymous fathers.
Okay.
And when we talk about anonymous fathers, um, you just don't know who they are. For example, we just seen recently the Kurt Franklin story.
Correct.
I've been dealing with that for years, dealing with the father wound, individuals, situations like that, not knowing their father. And then others who have, at 25 years old or 40 or 50, finding out for the first time the person that they thought was their father is not their father. And now the rug of identity is pulled, because the greatest truth that you and I have about ourselves is where we come from and who we come from. And if we've been lied on that, what other lies are we? If my identity has been assaulted at such a deep level, you want me to walk in truth, and I don't know what truth is now.
Good gracious. Whoo, that is you touching on something. You all in my life. That's all I'm saying. You are all in my life, and it leaves a hole. You can say I'm good, I dealt with it, but it leaves a hole for the unknown. You know, and I think that's one of the unknown and wanting to know.
And I think the unknown and wanting to know, and I also believe that that's a right. You follow me? That's a right. And when we look at individuals and dealing with like anonymous fathers, how many individuals have been born and they have been told so and so is their father, but there's no blood test done. And now when we look at ancestry.com, you see everything was done in the dark is coming to light.
It's coming to the light.
And Bernard, how often have we heard of stories of young girls who have gotten pregnant by father figures? They've been molested, they've been violated, and conceiving children by going south.
Correct.
And so now, even when we look at like anonymous fathers, I look at like some of the sperm banks out here now that we're going to have to fatherhood is approaching a totally different dynamic now.
Wow.
Because when we look at, let's say when we look at in vitro fertilization and all of that there are documented cases of individuals who have sold their sperm for 20 and 30 children. You follow me? To get $1,000 or $500 or whatever the case may be. And so it's more than just the man making money off of it. But what happens when that child grows up not knowing who his or her father is? Where's the identity? And how does that shape the identity? And so it's major. And like you say, this whole in our heart, and even as you shared your story, and what I'm grateful for about the father wound is that I just don't address what the father wound is.
Okay.
But I encourage individuals to know that they can be healed of that father wound.
Yes.
Because I mean, just to identify it, and there's some traits like you we talked about. There's some general characteristics that we see the father wound within men.
Okay.
Because we look at the father wound not receiving affirmation, and so how many men we talk about the Celtics, or we talk about the Lakers, or the Cowboys, or the Ravens, or whatever. but we can't tell them I'm struggling with depression.
Mm.
We can't tell somebody I'm suicidal, or I'm struggling with alcohol or some addiction. But we can talk about what size the engine is in the vehicle. But because the one aspect of the father wound is that we don't relate from a place of our inner soul and our inner self, because it hadn't been affirmed. So we're fragile, and we don't want nobody to touch it.
Touch it. Correct.
Because when they touch it, it's going to trigger something. And so we become extremely defensive when we look at some of the traits. And I have some that's lifted up in my book, Healing the Father Wound. And the same thing with women, because we're not just talking about son, we're talking about father-daughter.
Correct.
And so I'm just grateful that you in this podcast would address such a vulnerable, painful matter, that just like you, is more people dealing with it than just Bernard Hines.
Correct. I have always tried to not repeat what was done to me, as far, but I found myself doing that sometimes.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's like you go back to what you get good, and then you fall back.
Right.
You fall back. And I know that military turned me. When I went to Iraq war and I came back, I was a different father before I left.
Right.
And it was hard trying to get back to that. I was mad that I couldn't be that type of father again.
Let me say this, and I want to ask, and I'm not trying to put you on the couch.
No, you put me on the couch. I don't care. I want to help someone.
I think the place, when we look at individuals who are serving in the military, there is very little space for emotional intelligence and engagement. And so you're fighting for your life, you're fighting for the country, you're fighting for all of this. And so you shut down. And even though you shut down to serve, ain't nobody asking you what you feel like. But now you're in an environment like that, and then to come home to a spouse or come home to children, now trying to turn back on emotionally, it's too extreme.
Correct.
And so we find absent fathers who may have been in the house, but emotionally disconnected for various reasons.
Correct.
And so what I look at and even address, how do we speak to military fathers?
Yes.
So that they understand the wiring of serving the military. And we need that. But we have to not only address military fathers, we have to speak to the support system.
Correct.
Because healing doesn't just take place with the individual.
Correct.
But we speak to the whole support system so that the children will have the opportunity to still be engaged with their fathers who may be overseas or may be deployed or whatever. And I think we just have to do better systematically in keeping fathers engaged in the lives of their children.
Correct. Because I know a lot of people who grew up and father was a Vietnam vet.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So they had a lot of trauma through that.
Right.
So that is good. Listen, y'all, we are talking to Apostle Stephen W. Banks. We, as you see strolling on the bottom, Healing the Father Wound. You can purchase the book. We're going to be talking about some more stuff. But listen, y'all, if you feeling triggered by this, if this is really triggering you, we ask you to step away and regroup and come back, because it does get heavy. It does get heavy. Now, there's a lot of people that just go through life saying, I'm going to say I did when I thought my father wasn't there, or I say, I don't need nobody.
Yeah.
I don't need no man. I don't need nobody to tell me nothing. So I got hard.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And there's a lot of people right now that are mad.
Right.
How can we reach that person?
First of all, I think that anger is legitimate.
Okay.
In order to heal it, we first have to feel it. We first have to feel it. In when we look at, let's say, children in particular, 7, 8, 10-year old, they may not be able to get verbiage to what they're feeling emotionally, but why are they so much rage is on the inside?
Correct.
Because even myself, I never even said, with my father not being in my life, going through elementary, going through high school, and all, I never said that I was hurting because my father wasn't there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because in so many cultures, it's just expected. Daddy ain't
Expected.
there.
Yes.
But that still didn't mitigate the pain that I was feeling in the hurt. And I mean, playing football in stadiums and in the stadiums packed.
Mm-hmm.
But man, I would have given anything
Anything.
for an empty stadium and just to have my father there.
Wow.
Just to have my father there. And so I think even when you look at, like you said, the place of anger, the place anger is that which is discharged out. In depression, it's that same thing, but it turning on yourself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think by having opportunities like we're having to have this conversation, that we can recognize what we're dealing with. We're not the only one dealing with
We're
it.
not the only one dealing with it.
We're not.
That is a truth.
We're not. But if we can create a safe, non-judgmental environment in space where we can address these matters and we can just peel it back layer by layer.
Mm-hmm.
And this is in an environment. Even I do like some coaching and even some group coaching with the father wound in different. We have an online module as well as in person, and we just peel back different layers. But we know this, Bernard. Even the vulnerability of my heart, it's opening up the vulnerability in other people's heart.
Correct.
But at the same time, Stephen W. Banks, no, I'm not a therapist. And so I don't know. It ain't no healing power in me.
Correct.
To open. Okay, and now let's refer that. We have therapists that we refer to
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that's able to deal with the level of trauma, because some people their trauma may not be as severe as others.
Correct.
And so it takes a whole village to bring healing, healing to us. And so even like with anger, just sitting and having conversations, we understand that this is a byproduct of not being affirmed and being rejected. When we look at women dealing with rejection,
Rejection. Mm-hmm.
dealing with abandonment, that he left us. I remember I was dealing with a family, and they shared it publicly, and that's one of the only reasons I'm sharing it.
Mm-hmm.
With this lady, she was in her late 80s, and she was on hospice during that time, and she asked if she could meet with me, and I shared, and so we talked, and she said, "I'm ready to see the Lord, but the only thing that I'm dealing with is unforgiveness with my father. My father divorced my mother when I was a teenager."
Wow.
And so we're talking 65, 70 years.
Mm-hmm.
And look at the pain that's kept within
Correct.
the body,
Correct.
within the heart. But like I said, when we look at the father wound, it's not just addressing it, but how do we heal from it? How do we progress so that the father wound does not become a stronghold in our lives,
Mm-hmm.
but it becomes a vehicle that we can see the hand of God using to release us to healthier self, healthier relationship, healthier leadership.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
And so, but we have to do the work. We have to
Correct.
do it.
Correct. Because we can grow up with abandonment issues.
Oh yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Just stand back. No, I don't trust nobody in my circle. I don't want to do this because, they left. What
Oh
are
yeah.
you going to do?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
What are you going to do?
Yeah. And if I look at a lot of cases, even dealing with relationships, a lot of what people are dealing with now is the symptom and it's not the root,
Root.
it's the fruit.
Okay.
And some of what's clashing up here may not even be the issue. But if
True.
you look at like you talk about the abandonment, the lack of abusive relationship,
Mm-hmm.
where fathers have verbally and physically, sexually abused,
Mm-hmm.
that when we look at women dealing with men, coming from that with the first male in a female's life ought to be able to share intimacy without sexuality.
Correct.
But when those lines are crossed, it skews the life
Correct.
for that young girl going into adolescent and adulthood. And then you're looking at somebody that's in a relationship but have never broken free of the father wound. That if the greatest figure or the most honorable person in my life supposed that how can I trust this one? And so now it's projecting the pain on the current situation.
Correct.
This thing is heavy, man.
This thing is, you said something in a men's conference that I went to. And when it was said at the time, I was like, huh? You said, fathers, it was a bunch of men. You said, if you look at your daughter other than in a loving way,
Yeah.
you need to go and check yourself.
Yes, sir.
And I was like, my daughter was small then. She was about 3 or 4. I'm like, huh? But they grow up.
Yeah.
And I was like, she's getting old. That came back to me. I always seen her in a loving way, not in a look at her, and that is, but won't nobody say that if they feeling that way.
Yeah.
Who do you go and tell that to if you, I looked at my daughter the other day and I'm like, whoa, yeah. You know what I'm saying? You harbor that.
Yeah.
But you brought that out years ago. I want to thank you for that because that was powerful.
Yeah, and Vernon, because people have thoughts, and if we've been over sexualized,
Mm-hmm.
and if we've been sexually free in a sexually free environment, where are the boundaries?
Correct.
And even when we look at how we deal with little girls and going into adolescence, it's some things that you create as a father. You create. You can't expect them to create boundaries. And so, I mean, they're the child.
Correct.
In the boundaries, in the place of love and respect for them, if you create the boundaries, they're not going to allow anybody else to cross those lines that's been formed because they know that's their safe space.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. And listen, y'all, as Pastor Banks been saying, listen, we are not therapists here. What we are doing is just talking about some issues that we have dealt with, and Healing the Father Wound book. Listen, you need to go and get it. Mm-hmm. So let's get into the part now about, so how do we heal from this?
How do we heal? We listen to this podcast.
Mm-hmm.
We listen to this podcast and we see what registers with us.
Okay.
We read the book. We have dialogue. We engage in counseling.
Okay.
We engage in these conversations where it's not just random talk, but we create atmosphere for the book to be discussed and
Correct.
to share. We go to our therapists. We talk to other brothers from a place of vulnerability.
Correct.
And I don't think it's not one way is not one way.
I like that.
But we look for healthy father figures,
Okay.
because I'm referred to by many as a spiritual father, and I leave that up to individuals. I don't project myself that I'm
Okay.
everybody. No, that's by revelation, and that's by permission, that they give me permission to father them. I can't force my will or who I am in their life. If they don't see me, that's fine. But the whole thing, when Jesus came to Peter, and asked Peter, "Who do men say that I am?" And he said, "Thou art the Christ." He said, "Flesh and blood hadn't revealed it." I
Okay.
think it's important now for the rise of spiritual fathers who are not manipulated by doctrinal policies and denominational structures, to have relationships with sons and daughters from a legalistic perspective.
Okay.
But I think it's healthy for fathers, spiritual fathers, as well as natural fathers, to be open and to be vulnerable.
Got it.
Where if you think you're the top man on the pole and everybody's serving you, that ain't fatherhood.
Okay.
But fathering is about connecting with our sons and daughters where they are, not where we are, connecting with them in their journey, and then pouring into their lives and releasing them to their destiny. It's not about them coming to your church or your facility or whatever to puff you up, but fathers pour into sons and daughters so that they can do greater and they don't become intimidated by them.
And that could be used, as we say, even in the natural life.
Yeah,
Because as kids become adults and get older, you have to release it. You
you
have to
got
release them to go and be what God has called them to be.
right, right.
And it's hard. It
It
has
is.
caused some friction. It has caused
Yeah.
a whole lot of friction in lives. But I want to just look at some of these chapters in here. We ain't y'all gonna have to get the book, but I just want to look at some of the chapters you
You
have
want to
in
look
here.
at some of the chapters. All right.
I ain't gonna look at them. I'm just calling them out, and I want you to. We had the father wound syndrome.
Yeah.
Okay, but this is. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, now, the father wound syndrome is where I talk about some of the traits of the father wound.
Okay.
And they're different from men and women.
Okay.
And so we look at some of the characteristics, like for men being emotionally distant,
Yes. Okay.
being emotionally distant, being insecure because they have not been affirmed in their soul. And when we talk about PTSD, the name of your podcast, we're talking, these are conditions of the soul.
Got it.
And we have to work out our soul salvation, the salvation of our soul, by the word. Only the word of God can bring healing to our soul. We can shout and we can pass out and we can roll on the floor, but you still wake up tore up from the floor up.
From the floor up.
Yeah, because we haven't dealt with our soul and our soulish issues.
Wow. Listen, y'all got to get this book. We got The Power of Affirmation. Woo! Yeah. Fathers and daughters.
Yeah.
Fatherless daughters.
Yeah.
This is the truth about relationships.
Yeah.
The truth.
Yeah.
Sugarcoating stuff, walking on eggshells.
Yeah.
The truth. Now, when you're a person that doesn't like confrontation, how does that affect you wanting to tell the truth or say your truth?
I think once we get back to a place of identity, you know your value. And not only do you know your value, you don't have to defend your value because you're not in court, but you live out your value.
Mm-hmm.
And there's some things, even like guard my heart, I just don't let any and everybody into my heart. And so living out the truth, it requires the healing. it requires knowing, and then once again from the place of fathers, that affirming presence of the Father, that you can be whatever you desire to be. That you're brilliant, you are creative, you are entrepreneur, you are phenomenal to sons and daughters.
Correct.
And so we're hearing the voice of the fathers speaking into our life. But if our fathers have not said anything, we're dealing with insecurity. And we're relying on what other people are saying about us. And so we need to silence those voices so we can come into the truth of ourselves and who we are. Now, Bernard, can I say this real quick?
Go on, say it.
Years ago, I went through, I was in a long-term marriage, and it came to end after 25, 26 years, one of the darkest chapters of my life. But even that, I mean, mega ministry, all of this and all of bam, bam, all of that. But during that time, the darkest chapter in my life, it was in that time where the Spirit of the Lord spoke to me. And even in speaking to me, the Spirit of the Lord just shared with me that you have lost your life. And the Spirit of this is a conversation and I share this with pastors. I share this with business leaders. What does it profit a man to gain the world and to lose his soul? Man, I had lost my soul taking care of everybody else except for Stephen W. Banks. And so and I don't know who I'm talking to tonight, but I know Holy Spirit is ministering. It seemed like some things are becoming disassembled in your life. But I want to encourage you, even with the disassembling, with the darkness that you are encountering, that the Lord will use this season to create a new structure, a new wineskin where you will find yourself. And it was in my darkest hour, man of God, that I found myself. And let me say this. And when I found myself, some people just wanted the bishop.
Okay.
Some people just wanted the apostle.
Okay.
But it wasn't about that. It was about Steve. Because some people just want to fish in the loaves and how they can capitalize.
Okay.
But my truth is I'm not going to allow, because in finding myself and doing the emotional and the spiritual inner work, I'm not going to lose myself to a relationship. I'm not going to lose myself to a title, to a position, to anything, because I know the cost of losing my life.
Wow. Listen, that wasn't even a question. That was straight from the throne room, y'all.
I can't even remember the question.
I know you won't even the question. No, you said you want to say something, and you said something. Yeah. That was powerful. Yeah. Listen, we could be here all day, but we ain't. Y'all gonna have to go and get this book. Yeah. To purchase the book, go to www.stephenwbanks.org. I'm telling you, it is a great read. I just started reading it. I knew it's been out there. I'm just tell you straight up. I knew it was out there, but I just started reading it because sometimes, sir, when you get into a period of your life where you think you got it all together, and you think, I'm doing kind of good, and like you said, that darkness come, God to bring back to your remembrance, hey, the man wrote a book for you. So whoever's out there, you think you're in a dark place, you might be, but there's a book. Now, I say I talk to God and a therapist.
Yes.
So I let folks know you can have both.
Yes.
You can have God and you can read this book.
Yeah.
But sir, I just want to thank you. Listen, y'all, he is available. He is available for speaking engagement, counseling sessions. Okay, you can go to SWB at stephenwbanks.org. And sir, what do your counseling sessions or your presentation, what do you bring to that?
Well, it depends.
Okay.
When I do like I do group sessions, I actually have a Facebook group for
Oh,
healing the father wound for women. Because Bernard, the painful thing is most men, very few men go after healing until they get in a place of desperation.
yes, yes, yes.
Yeah.
Please say that again, sir.
Yeah,
Please say that again.
very few men they don't go for a place of healing until they're in a desperate situation.
Good gracious. That
And when we talk about healing and therapeutic work and the inner work, that's maintenance. Man, we change the oil on in the car every 3 months, and we
mhm.
rotate the tires, and we do all of that. But just imagine now, Bernard, what year were you born in, sir?
1968.
1968. Just imagine if you had a 1968 Chevy and you didn't do any work with it.
Correct.
You follow me?
Yes.
Look at the rust on the paint. Look at the tires wore out. Look at the engine. And you're much more valuable than that 68 vehicle.
Correct.
But men, we just think in a posture of surviving. I'm just taking care of the family, providing. Yeah, you're providing, but they need your emotional support.
Correct.
They need your spiritual presence. They need your vulnerability. They need your example. And so we talk about this in not only in group but also in individual counseling sessions, and even with individual counseling sessions, it's more tailored to what they're dealing with individually.
Okay.
But when we look at group, we just recently did a 4 week healing the father wound session for women, and we talked about abandonment. We
Mhm.
talked about fatherless daughters.
Mm.
We talked about relationship and just different topics because man, I can stay on it all day. I,
I it's in you.
yeah, it is.
Yeah, it is in you. It is in you. But we're gonna listen. If you want to book a speaking engagement or book a counseling session or just a presentation, use the code word the laugh therapist. Now you won't get nothing off. You won't get nothing off. It'll just let me know. It'll just let him know you heard it from this podcast. You ain't getting nothing off. Or just let me know you're getting it from the podcast. But sir, listen, how can people follow you on social media? How can they follow you and stuff like
I'm
that?
on social media on all platforms with my name, Stephen W. Banks, on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, all of them.
All that.
I'm on all, and also Bernard, we're excited. I have an amazing team that's developing a curriculum for healing the father wound.
Wow.
In this curriculum, because we offer services not just to ministries, but we
Mm-hmm.
do services for city government, for different agencies, for federal agencies, and so with our curriculum, individuals and agencies will be able to purchase the curriculum, and then also we'll look at train the trainer, and where this will
Mm-hmm.
be a certified program, and individuals who have gone through the healing of father wound certification process, they will be facilitating classes. And so this is not just a message, it's a movement. And
I love it.
and I'm just grateful for the opportunity that you've given me to
No,
share that
thank you.
with your audience.
Thank you. Listen, we're gonna do y'all do anything virtual? I know someone's asking that.
We do.
Okay.
And so even if individuals can stay in touch with me on my Facebook page, we shared like different sessions that we have
Okay. Okay.
available, and then registration for various classes that we have.
Come on, y'all. Let's blow this book up. Healing the Father Wound. Sir, thank you for being here. And before I release you, please give a word to someone who is struggling, who's trying to connect, who figure like, I just want to give up. I don't tried it. They
Yeah.
won't let. How can just give them a word of encouragement?
Yeah, you know, I want to say to that person, like I shared where I was years ago. You may be in a dark place, and people look at you, and you may be shining on the outside, but there's darkness on the inside. I want you to know the dark place that you're in is an opportunity for you to really experience the love of God that's not judgmental, the grace of God that's not heavy handed. And regardless of what you've done, maybe you haven't been an ideal father, maybe you, as a son or as a daughter, you're still dealing with it. And this session was kind of hard for you to digest. I get that. I get that. I understand that. But I want to speak over your life that the grace of the Lord is greater than whatever you're going through. That you're not going to throw in the towel. You're not going to quit. You're not going to abandon your responsibilities as a father. But I believe that God's going to use this to re-engage you, because the Spirit of the Lord will just touch you afresh, even as you open up. No, you haven't been perfect. Guess what? I have neither. Bernard had neither. We're far from it.
Yeah.
But I want you to know that your best days are your healthiest days, and that will only take place when you become intentional in your heart to do the inner work of healing. Don't look at everybody else. Don't take the beam out of other folk eyes. When I ask the Lord, I say, Lord, don't work on me, the bishop of the power, work on Steve. And that's what I want you to just ask the Lord to work on your heart. And Bernard, I want to say to you, man of God, uh, how much I love you.
Love you
You
too,
you
sir.
know the love I have for
Yes, sir.
you, for your brother, for your mother, for your family, and I'm grateful for your family and the place that you all have had in my life down through the years. And I want you to know, man of God, when I wrote this, and actually in the process of writing a follow up to this, I want you to know that God's going to use this as your the story you're about to walk into, that it has redemptive value. That I hear the Lord saying that the enemy has tried to destroy you from the inside out. But even as he has desired to destroy you, I hear the Lord saying, be of good courage, for I have prayed for you that your faith would not fail. And man of God, when you are converted, when you go through this process, you thought you were awesome before, but I see a new man emerging. I see a man emerging with greater peace, greater resolve, greater vulnerability, greater transparency, because this is not about you. This is about what your Heavenly Father has allowed to happen in your life. So you can take the broken places of not having a father, that you will appreciate your Heavenly Father even that much more. And man of God, I just speak over your life that you're going to pour into these young men. You're going to go back to these military installations, and they're going to laugh, and while they're laughing, the healing presence of the Lord is going to. You ain't acting deep, you ain't throwing a whole lot of scripture, but I hear the Lord saying that He's going to use you to allow your words to be His word and to bring healing to those you encounter. And I just see you totally free, sir. I see you totally free. And you will realize, even in not having your father, in the loss of those experiences, that God will bring this chapter even greater, and it will have more significance to you. And I just want you to know, however I can support you, you know you got it.
Whew. I thank you for this podcast. I know folks say one about me, but yes, he was.
Yes, it was. Yeah.
Yes, I don't podcast for everybody else. This was mine because, sir, I have learned that I have not been a perfect father, but I wanted my kids to be perfect.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they're human too.
Yeah.
They got feelings, they got emotions.
Yeah.
This was helpful for me, and I pray that it was helpful for all those who are listening. Listen, this is on for those who are listening to the podcast. Also know we do have this on YouTube also. Under my page, The Laugh Therapist, you can go and you can also see it as we're saying it also. You can put a face to the voice. And as we call it, PTSD, processing traumatic situations differently.
Yes.
The father wound is processed differently by so many different people. And sir, you are released from the stigma-free zone. Thank you for being here. God bless you, and may you continue to thrive in what you're doing because it is needed.
Amen. Thank you so much. And let me just share, those who
ahead.
want to support my ministry in this assignment, just inbox me on Facebook or whatever. But Bernard, I love you, man of God. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you too, sir.